IBNX Radio.
Good Sunday afternoon and welcome to Dynamics of Dialogue. I'm your host, Rebel Queen, and me and my co host deliberately are here to tickle your intellect and tackle some critical issues along the way. We've got guest co hosts, good music, and some great conversation. Stay tuned for some dynamic dialogue on IBNXRadioNetwork.com. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Sunday, everybody. This is your host, Rebel Queen, and I've got some fantastic guests in the studio today. We are talking about some good stuff. Today's topic is make the magic happen. How do we do that? Well, we're going to talk about AI. Now, what do I mean when I say AI? For the past few months, when I've been talking about AI, it's been about artificial intelligence. But today, the type of AI I'm talking about is appreciative inquiry. This can do things for you that you wouldn't imagine. We're going to dig right more into that subject as soon as we come back from break. So just stay tuned for more Dynamics of Dialogue in just a moment. What's up? You are listening to Dynamics of Dialogue on IBNX Radio. It's your dynamic, your dialogue. It's Mad Queen of Mad Queen Media, making sure you're checking in. Welcome back to Dynamics of Dialogue, and today I'm going to introduce some very special guests that we have in the studio. I'm going to start right off to my right with Adria Jordan Kitchens. Say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Tell everybody, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, Adrian.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I am
executive director of an organization called One Small Change. And it was founded by Deidre Hawkins, who is sitting next to me. Our mission really is to amplify the impact of other organizations. And we do that on a platform of restorative justice because we have a passion for bringing healing to the community. In that role, I have the honor of being able to work with several different organizations and also continue this conversation on race and racism that is so important to me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And the conversation on race and racism is important to me as well. That's why I like to work with you guys as soon as every opportunity I get. Dr. Hawkins, would you,
Yes.
like Dr. Deidre Hawkins is the board director for One Small Change?
Founder and board.
Founder and board director.
And support in that, and I
Yes.
guess guidance. I do a number of different things, and really what I try to do is just show up and be a positive force wherever I can be. And so I've had an opportunity to provide some support and listen to other people's stories that said, we really need you to be a nonprofit and help other people in this work. And that's how One Small Change started. I also have a company called Both and Both and Partners, and that was very purposeful because I say both and a lot. That's an opportunity for me to share how there aren't answers that have to be either or, but that usually the answers are multiple. And so if we can try all of them out and see which one sticks, then we are in a better situation than not.
All right, all right. And the gentleman to your left, right? To
my right.
To your right. It would be Mr. Clyde Lloyd. Clyde, say hello and tell everybody about yourself.
Hello, my name is Clyde Lloyd. I have the opportunity to work with these two amazing women. I help to facilitate meetings and groups and workshops, and I get to travel, and I get to talk about cultural competency and participate in conversations about healing racism. We also have the Chicago dinners that
Yes.
we enjoy having a conversation about racism over dinner.
Yes. So, okay, so just so that I can add a little bit more honesty and integrity to this conversation, because I feel that everyone in this room has just completely minimized their entire presence and skill set. So I'm going to be the one to say that, I think that, you all are like, okay, well, I just do this. I just dibble and dabble and a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So let me just tell y'all the real deal here. And I'm just going to go right back around the room. So Clyde is, I've only known Clyde for a very short period of time, and of course met him through Dr. Hawkins and Adria. And I got to tell you, in the short time that I've known him, I've seen him to be such a positive force, and this is just what I've observed with my own two eyes. I keep joking to this, it's from the time I found out, this man has 15 certifications, so ranging in all kinds of, from mental health and peer care and trauma-informed care. And as he ran down the list, I was just sitting there like, wow. And I got a chance to see him in action the other day, just by speaking some truth and sharing his story so eloquently, help someone else get a breakthrough. And that's incredibly powerful, just for being who you are. Dr. Hawkins, I don't, I've worked with Dr. Hawkins before as my former colleague and teammate, and I can say she's one of the most influential women I know. She manages, you have a way of managing to wield your influence, and it is just so tickling. Latrice and I were chatting yesterday about the experience with, people wanting questions answered, and your masterful way of managing your process. And it's, she manages to keep this large vision in mind, and at the end of the day, it's hard for everybody else to sometimes see the pieces when you have this big thing, but then it slowly comes together. And Deetra's kind of got that. And that's what she does with Both Her Partners and One Small Change. And we're going to get into more of that. And Adria is a life coach, an amazing spiritual woman. And she's been, may I? And she's my life coach and is guiding me through some of the greatest challenges I've had and putting so many things in perspective. And all of these people are entrepreneurs and doing incredibly amazing things in the community. And I need for everybody to know that. And so before we get out of here, during the show, we're going to give you an opportunity to follow them on social media. So as we get started, I just want to make a few announcements because we have a couple of things coming up today at 3 o'clock from 3 to 6. There is an event called Discovering Your Unapologetic Woman. And this is hosted by the beautiful ones and certified professional life coach Chanel Williams of Dream Life Coaching. This is from 3 to 6 at the Doubletree Hotel. I'm going to tell you, tickets are $25. If you still have time to get it, you want to get out there, you can make the payment through the Cash App. Beautiful ones. Our information is posted on the video. You can check it on social media on the YouTube link. It's out there. Just go check it out. Also search the beautiful ones on Facebook for more information. Also tomorrow, Dr. Obari Cartman will be at the Shrine of the Black Madonna. Tomorrow is Monday. On Tuesday the 24th, Dr. Obari Cartman will be at the Shrine of the Black Madonna with a seminar on teaching young black men to value women. That's so incredibly important. And it's not, I appreciate Dr. Cartman's perspective because it's very much about men also need healing and they need understanding. And that this is a unified circle that we're in. And that self-care is for all of us to be. And he's so focused on community. And we don't always have a lot of people find that. We don't have a lot of people always get a hold of that and what we're trying to do. And last, I want to announce that the Gwinnett County Police Department is having their 3rd annual Police Academy. They are now accepting applications. The deadline is until May 25th. This program is, I just want to offer this because lots of times it's for middle school and high school children, and lots of us, particularly African American parents, dread having a conversation with our children about law enforcement. And I think the perspective we approach it from is important. I think that the first introduction, it might be beneficial to try something different. And instead of having a conversation about the dangers, let's maybe take some opportunity to discuss what it is they actually do and what they're supposed to do. And they're very good at that. And they'll take good care of you over there. That program is designed to educate middle school and high school students that live in Gwinnett County about how the police enforce the law on the local and a state level. They have all kinds of demonstrations, taser demonstration, defense tactic awareness, and it's held at the Gwinnett Police Training Center off of 316. And they do have a jail tour, but again, I would offer that perspective, have the opportunity to go learn what it is that they do and have an open dialogue, because I think giving young people an opportunity to have dialogue and ask questions gives them a little bit more a chance to be empowered and to move forward. If you're interested in attending, reach out to Carlos Huggins, phone number 678-226-7752, or you can email youthpoliceacademy@gwinnettcounty.com. Okay, now we've got those announcements out of the way. Let's take a moment and just dig right into appreciative inquiry and what that is really quickly. Dr. Hawkins, would you mind just sharing with us
a little bit about
appreciative inquiry?
Sure. Would it be helpful to tell a story? Maybe.
Sure. You can start with the story, whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Okay. So when I first started talking about AI, it was during the American Idol period, and people thought I was talking about American Idol, not appreciative inquiry. But what I like to often say about appreciative inquiry is that it is essentially turning what we do, problem solving, upside down. That instead of starting with identifying what the problem is, we start by identifying and talking to people about what works, and we use stories. And so that's part of why I thought I would start with a story. I had an opportunity because I was in Connecticut, and I have a faculty appointment at the Yale Program for Recovery and Community Health, that allowed me to start working with organizations that were really doing phenomenal stuff. One of them was called African American Men in Recovery, and they were having 40-some people show up twice a week to a program that didn't have any ceiling tiles. And they asked us to go and find out what was making that program work and why people were showing up, and they didn't have, all their funding had been cut, and they didn't know why this was like so remarkable. So we showed up and we said, so what is it you're doing here that's so, culturally competent and wonderful? And they looked at us with blanks and said, we don't know what you mean by that word. And so we were able to step back and say, well, just tell us what you do. Mm-hmm. And what I learned out of that program is that they did whatever it took to support the men in their recovery in the community, because people were talking about you could go away and get well and then come back into your community and you wouldn't be well because your community wasn't well. So their focus was being well. I enjoyed doing all of that work. We found tremendous answers to how to support the community and how to help these men. But when the research and the answers went up to the funders, they said, oh, that's wonderful, and they gave people plaques, and then the leadership would change and all of the money would go away. And so I began to really search for, well, what is going to create sustainable change? Because even if you do something right, you're not getting funded. And what I learned from that is that we sort of have this double-edged sword. We do things where we say, here's a problem, okay, here's the answer for the problem. Now we fix the problem, we take the money away because the problem doesn't exist any longer. So how do we create something instead that's just built on sustainability and that can continue the work, instead of building it on something that we're going to eventually take away because now that I've solved a problem, I don't need your funding anymore.
Wow.
So we build it on a passion. I call it the magic sauce in all of the work that I do. And it's very simple. You just start by asking a question of, tell me here a story about something that's working really well, something that's given you a high point, something that has allowed you to feel alive, something that, helps you realize that there is hope for tomorrow, not maybe 2 years down the road, but just that lets you get up and go one more day, one more step, one more, moment. And I'm trained as a psychologist, so I often tell people that, my work really is about keeping people alive and recognizing that making the decision at this moment to stay that way, to really work in that direction, means that we have to take a different kind of approach. And so appreciative inquiry, which actually has been used and was created out of Case Western University, is a business approach. It's an approach that's been over 30 years of research and showing in the business world that it really works, and that if your bottom line is really meeting people with what they need and what they want because it works, then you stay in business. And the way to keep people coming to work every day is to connect them to the things that they care about. So I've been able to work with my colleague David Stainer to really bring this approach to public health and to other settings, and to use it personally. I have an adapted way in which we spent the last 3 days actually
Yes.
helping people discover what it is that makes a difference in their lives, co-create a process, in collaboration and partnership with other people, so that they have allies, they have support, they have someone else who understands and is on the road, so they're not getting burned out to do the work. And it's just a really remarkable way to easily, even though it doesn't seem, it's counterculture, it doesn't make sense, right, from the beginning.
It's hard. And
It
I
is
will
very
tell
hard.
you, I will tell you, the challenge that we had, one of the challenges that I had is when I opened up the Thin Book.
Yes.
I kept getting skinny stuck in my head because that's what Tony kept calling
Yes,
it.
it is.
When I opened up the Thin Book, the first thing that jumped out to me was the distinction it made between the change management theory and appreciative inquiry,
Yes.
because that's the place where I definitely got stuck. But although I was getting stuck there, I also found that there was space because I'm a progressive thinker. I'm an analytical thinker, but on the other hand, I'm a creative. I'm split
Yes.
kind of down the middle, so I'm often tossed in between. And this is really what I found that 3-day course did for me, was help me get to the place where I know that I'm comfortable in the leadership side. I don't like that management piece. I don't like it, and I don't like, I'm not good in that area, because I don't want to say I'm not good, but because I don't like it, I don't perform well. Is where the
And if
the
it's
real
not your gift, you're not going to
so,
invest in it.
Right. My place is the dreaming and the planning and all of that. So it really helped me put some things in place and get some structure and get some ideas. I think we should talk about that in a little bit more detail when we come back from break.
Absolutely.
We're going to go off to break and we'll be right back with more Dynamics to Dialogue.
You're listening to IBNX. IBNXradio.com. The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music. Hey, what's up? It's Jay-Z.
Hey, I'm Mariah Carey.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
It's your boy T.I.P., man. Get in. It's your boy Sean Kingston.
What's up, y'all? I'm Beyonce.
This is Nicki Minaj, and I'm in the mix with
IBNX Radio.
Life comes at us fast. One thing that gives us comfort is knowing that someone is there when you need them. Well, at Pleasant Hills Insurance, that's our promise to our clients. Call 770-910-7460 today or visit our website at pleasanthillsinsurance.com for your free, no obligations quote on retirement and life insurance. Many of the large agencies have turned their back on the retired workforce. At Pleasant Hills Insurance, if others can't qualify you, very often we can. Pleasant Hills Insurance proudly provides options for preconditions. So call 770-910-7460 or visit pleasanthillsinsurance.com today for your free, no obligations quote on retirement and life insurance. Pleasant Hills Insurance. We're here when you need us.
Get Twisted Sundays. We back at it again in honor of the legend. Look, my biggest problem is I don't believe the concept of in love. In college, I was with Whitney. When she kissed me, I felt then the heavens had descended upon me so strongly. I was wrong, B. She came from the Big Apple, wrong tree. I kind of sometimes feel like that was God perfecting me. I got with Fat and low-key, she changed the trajectory of my vision. Supernatural circumcision from selfish ways, I'm on a mission. But to be alive, I said I never felt this way, I have before. But this love thing just ain't no grab and go, you have to pull. Everything inside out, pray it don't hit the flow, simple as that. This just ain't rap, this ain't fictional. They may know they're medicinal, and may love seem conditional, but it ain't though. Hell really, it's perfection. Even if it's like Anthony Hamilton's beard and come through in sections. The lesson, better yet the blessing, is the fact that it's a choice perception in the wrong direction has the power to destroy your essence. Check your reflection, make sure that it's cool. For your protection, learn yourself before you learn in school. That you inadequate, truthfully I'm an advocate for these savages chasing these objects that be inanimate. I wish that I could give them something way more tangible. It's hard to get your gift from God when both your hands is full. With all your pettiness, acting Ed and Eddie-ish. Lack of umbrellas always make raindrops fall down the heaviest. Look, stand under something, then hopefully it'll help you understand that everybody black on the inside like Folger skins. Keep your composure, be careful how you approach a man. Kids can't smell the odor or slop to know they grosser than most people. But ain't no one picture perfect on easels. Don't hate nobody, be guileless, where that poison is lethal. My cousin got out, got locked back up, that boy on the sequel. That penal system got his penal gland smothered in fecal matter. I'm still squashing all the chatter though. Them thotties try me, I dodge the bull like a matador. Pause the batter, go my quota way past the status quo. That's why Fat got my heart ended in like a Navajo or a Rapaho. I got nasty flow. Till whack rappers take a backseat, I'm a chaperone. From the back straight to the trash, that's where they have to go. No cooning, no metro, I'm booming till my casket close. I should rap some more, but I have to go. R.I.P. Ali, but I'm feeling like Ashes though. Roll for dope, then go for bro like hook and laterals. Holy mackerel, I murder the international players anthem.
Feel like I've been through it all. Sometimes I start to forget. I reminisce on old girls and then I start to regret. I just had dinner with Amber, she out here doing her thing. She a model now, look like it's all moving in sync. I think maybe I just should've pursued that. Everybody know I'm not the nigga to do that. Now everyone around me graduated school now. They a step ahead and I just had to make my move. How come these niggas hate when hate don't get you paid? Like, ooh, he sound like Kendrick, ooh, he sound like Drake. But no matter the comparison, my shit be sounding great. I just throw out all these lines and then these niggas take the bait. Damn, I feel like I'm indecisive, but I can resist temptation with all of my options now. I don't ever get impatient making bad decisions cause I'm young and I got excuses. My mother might tell you I'm the same, just not as stupid. I've been checking Facebook, looking at what everyone doing. I see people engaged, I see people in movies, I see old friends dying, I see relationships failing. Crazy how we grown now, man, this shit getting scary. Yeah. I'm just trying to stay connected, doing some reflecting. Don't know who I am, I can't see my own reflection. Yeah. I'm just trying to stay connected, doing some reflecting. Don't know who I am, I can't see my own reflection. Yeah. My ex FaceTime me from Vegas, I know she tired of complaining. I think she's still holding on to what we might have created. Might have been faded, might have been sober, who knows? She ain't trying to be crazy, she ain't trying to do the most. I don't blame her, these days my relationships are working my favor. If I'm not working for some change, I'm out there working for paper. I'm trying to reach out to my family more, cause falling off with them is just that one thing I can't afford. Yeah, kinda bored, kinda not. Need a woman, not a thought. Don't need problems, got a lot. I got friends back home, feel like I forgot about talking Tori, Kelly, Janelle. I just feel like girls in Georgia don't ever compare. I hear when I'm wrong, but I'm just never aware. My God, I'm just never prepared. Yeah, I ain't tripping on what can't be, tripping on who ain't me. All the girls that I used to talk to probably hate me. Yeah.
What's up, y'all? This is Frida Love. I want you to join me on Sundays from 1 to 3 p.m. with Dynamics of Dialogue, where the art of conversation creates something special on IBNX Radio Network.
Hey, yes it was. And we are right back with Dynamics of Dialogue. And we were just having some great conversation talking about appreciative inquiry. And Dr. Hawkins was telling a story about appreciative inquiry, you know, a opportunity where we saw for it to work. And it sounded like for me, for one, with that program, if we were talking about recovery, so were these people in recovery from substance abuse?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I would imagine that I'm thinking that they've been dealing with incarceration in and out.
All kinds of things.
Yeah,
yes.
and so I'm imagining, for me, what stuck out to me in the story was you said something about the space that they did it in. Mm-hmm. It didn't have any ceiling. No tiles. Mm-hmm. So it was just like it kind of removed a limit, like a visual mental limit for them.
Well, the idea was that recovery happens anywhere, and that you don't have to be perfect and all pulled together and clean, and that these men were showing up. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, in the way we think about groups, it's like 8 people. They were having 40 men showing up twice a week for 2 hours, and the program's money at that time had been cut. So it was like, what was behind that? The man who was really the energy behind this, his name is Dorian Parker, and he used to tell people that he would help them get what he's got. Mm-hmm. And that he was going to give it away, and that they went to extreme lengths, to help people. They went across and they said, we won't go into the crack house to find you, but we will stand outside and ask for you. And they did that. What I loved about that work and how I think about appreciative inquiry is that we don't look back and try to see what went wrong with those programs. He didn't look at men and say something's wrong. Mm-hmm. He looked at them and he said, you're showing up every day. One day I was there in group, and there's a man there, and he was pretty high at the time. Mm-hmm. And the group members were like, you're letting this man stay here? And he said, hey, he showed up. Mm-hmm. He wants something.
He showed up high.
And we're not getting ready to tell him to go away just for this reason. And so it was really a beautiful example of what happens when you can engage someone where they are. Mm-hmm. And what I like, again, about thinking of appreciative inquiry is that it comes out of this business model that, really has these steps for like what you do. But the same steps can apply to a person, they can apply to a program, they can apply to how you live your life. And that's really what I've been trying to help other people think about. Because if you're in alignment, you know, and doing sort of the right things because it's what your gift is, like you were saying, oh, I don't really like that management stuff, but I like this leadership piece, then it helps you do that. But there are other people who love paper. Let them do paper. You know, there are other people who love to do other things. So what is it they love to do, and how do you use that to amplify and do more of it? But there are tons and tons of stories, and my two colleagues here have been along with me on this journey, and I'm sure can add in on how they've started to, you know, see the importance of AI, or and really the piece that kind of comes along with this is that I do a blended version of thinking about cultural competency, which simply means being aware of the things and the experiences we all have had that help us to engage other people, like have a conversation with somebody on the street, and the things in our experiences that might make us hesitant to talk to someone on the street who might be a little bit different than us. And so we have to be aware of what those things are that help us to engage, and the things that keep us from doing that, so that we can heal, so we can have a back and forth and not have an assumption.
And not have an assumption. Yeah, you know what? And I want to take that opportunity to ask Adria to talk about the Chicago dinners a little bit, because I just got a chance to go to one for my first time. And the first thing I thought, what did I say to you? I said, okay, oh my gosh, we're walking in the door. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I knew it was, transformative. I just go with the flow when it comes to teaching nowadays. I'm trying. I'm really trying. I'm just trying to ask, because I find it doesn't. I'm not going to do well when I ask questions.
You will do well.
You will do well asking questions.
You might not get an answer to the question, but it's good to ask the question.
Right. But I thought I was going to walk in the door and it's just going to be, a bunch of Trump support. Oh, God, I can't tell you in my head what I was thinking I was going to see. And it turned out to be so different.
Yes.
It was great, though. So, Adria, you want to talk about that a little bit? I'm already trying to recruit my friends on Facebook.
Oh, wonderful.
to want to host these Chicago dinners all over. So, please, yes.
Oh, sure. So, the Chicago dinner model came out of Chicago. Actually, Dietrich completed her dissertation on the Chicago dinners. And their use at the time, to find a way to start to bridge that racial divide up in Chicago that they were having. So it was one of the strategies, when she talks about AI, if we pull it back in, that was just one of the strategies that they were using, was the Chicago dinner. So being able to bring people together, very diverse opinions, strangers or people that, bringing them together and creating what I like to call a container for people to share their stories and experiences, and then by sharing their stories and experiences, other people are impacted by that. Yeah. And the hope is to build relationships, right, and start to shift people's. You don't have to shift their belief, but at least they have been impacted by someone else's experience of what it has meant to live in our United States of America, especially in this conversation around race. And I believe the power is in that conversation that you have with other people and hearing the stories, because the power for me is really the most powerful part of it for me is just the introductions and what has brought people there, right? Asking that question, even bringing AI in again, right? Asking the right question at the beginning. Not like how you got there, how you drove there, but what brought you into the conversation. And just hearing people's stories is so impactful for me. And wanting to go up and ask them later, more questions about what you hear. And the Chicago dinners for me have been just so powerful in being able to see people build relationships. And they also it inspires people to want to do more. Like, what is the next step? And that's the biggest thing. And I've noticed we'll have it scheduled from 6 to 8 or 6 to 8:30, and then 9 o'clock we're still talking. 9:30 people are still talking. Yeah. I think the first time I experienced it, that's what Dietrich said. She said, you will notice that people will keep talking, and that's what happens. I mean, I want to say in our first one, there was so many people. Yeah. We only had stories, but the stories made people talk to each other. It was it's an amazing experience.
It is. I think I got to see. I remember last year when we did that thing with Gwinnett, we were struggling at the time, and just trying to really get that right and thinking, okay, how do you make that space to create the safety, the conversation, And sure enough, lo and behold, I think the event was scheduled for 3 hours. They had to kick us out.
Right.
Yes.
chief mayors had to come out and say, hey, they're gonna lock the gates. It locks automatically, so if y'all don't leave, you're gonna be stuck here till tomorrow.
Right.
People just enjoyed each other.
Yeah.
But and there were people I met that I still had great connections with. David Merrill from our Frontier, Electronic Frontiers.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to bring him on as well. I mean, because he's still very engaged in doing that work. You find when you go into those spaces and feeling safe, and I think that's the difficulty, because I think most of us now, we're accustomed to try and engage on social media, and social media, there are trolls and there are people that are say all these triggering things, and they're intentional.
Well, I have to put a plug that social media is wonderful for getting information out, and I love that. But I love what you're trying to do here with the dialogue, that you can go back and forth. We have seen whole things fall apart through social media because you can't, as I like to joke, that's why we have all these emojis, because you cannot, express in text the feelings and the things that we communicate in our facial expressions and our tone. That's so important. And we really do need to help people have the skill of being able to have a dialogue. And we did some work in Rome recently and had a great conversation with some people related to that, and dinners that we've been having all across, where people are like, oh, my favorite thing about a Chicago dinner is that people really do use the forks to eat.
Right.
I know who said that. That was so funny, because I'm always making a joke about stabbing somebody with a fork. It's a joke. And so when they said that, what did you say that?
I'm sure it was teacher.
That was just too funny. I'm sorry.
Yes, it's an important piece.
Yes, it is.
Yes. But I'm sorry. I was just going to say, because I always tell people, one of my mentors used to say, Catherine Woodward Tillmans, she would always say, social media is not an adequate medium, right, to hold the emotions. Correct. Right, just like a text is not an adequate medium unless you add a bunch of different words, and you have to really go really into detail about what you're saying and why you're saying it and how you're saying it, and it's just not an adequate medium for that. And so that's, like Deetra said, we have seen entire organizations, unfortunately, destroyed through social media.
Right.
Which we still love. So it's not of course, being a both and appreciative. It's not to be against. It's to recognize what you use different things for. So one of the things that I often talk about from an appreciative perspective is that most people think about change, right? And some of us love change because we're going to change our hair color, every other week. We change our nails. That's easy. We're going to go get a new outfit. We change. That's change we like to embrace, because in some ways it's fairly temporary. But when we're talking about real transformative change, that when I leave or I'm not here and it's 50 years later or 100 years later, that the legacies of the things I've done actually still have a positive impact. So my work is around that at this point, is really visioning that. I have a daughter who's 9.5, and I'm very interested, concerned, engaged in supporting and creating a world that's going to welcome her and all of her gifts, that's going to see her as a valued human being in our society. And that isn't going to, devalue her or believe that she doesn't have anything to offer, and that we somehow throw people away, where we're not acknowledging the lives that get lost for no reason.
And it's important that you also, what I personally observe is that you don't prepare her, you don't prepare her, put her in the mind of the black tax.
No.
Of having, and I think that when we accept that we have our own greatness within itself, and that is sufficient, and that our no is complete, and we can figure out opportunities, and if we can't, we can learn what we need to get it.
And we have a lot of the things that even in our communities that we consider to be at risk, or where there's nothing there. The work that I do starts with the premise of saying that wherever you are, something is working.
Right.
It may not work the way you want it to be working, but it's working. Okay.
Right. It's working.
And so how do you use that? And it might be just 5% of something that's working. So we focus in on that. And if you don't do that first, because everybody knows the problems.
Yeah.
We always know what's wrong. We know what we need to fix. But we don't necessarily spend enough time figuring out and just exploring the things that we know work well. And the best part of this is that we really know this already. Like anybody who does sports knows that if you want to make the basket, you dream about making the basket. You
Right.
don't dream about missing the basket.
Well, but you know what though? What about there are people? It's true. That nobody dreams about missing the basket, but then you've got a whole lot. I think that don't believe they have the ability, the capability to get that, or they don't have that opportunity. They don't see that as opportunity. Clyde, could you think you can speak to some things about people needing to feel that they can actually see an opportunity to achieve what they need? We talk about that a lot in recovery and at CPSs.
You know, I noticed that when I used to tell my story in recovery, I would spend 45 minutes on telling all the negative things and 5 minutes on what is working, how things got better, you know, and I thought about that and I said, you know what, this is backwards. You know, I've had experiences where I had the opportunity to have conversations with people, you know, and it was a social media thing. That was the conclusion we came to. I was at cultural competency out at Emory University at the conference center, and I parked my car downstairs, and I was coming up in the elevator, and the elevator opened on the second floor, and a lady was looking at her phone, and she looked up and saw me, and nothing but fear hit her face, and she was like, oh, no, that's okay, you go ahead, and she backed out. And I just kind of looked at it, and I was thinking about it, and I went to the cultural competency, and about 5 minutes later, that very lady came through the door. And I saw her come through the door, so I waited to break time, and I went over and I said, hey, how you doing? She said, oh, I'm doing well. I said, it's so good to see you again. She said, it's good to see you too. And she said, do I know you? I said, yeah, we met earlier. I was the guy in the elevator. And she hung her head down. And I said,
she realized
listen, I just wanted to have a conversation about it. You don't know me, right? She said, no, I don't. So I said, who did you see? Because you saw someone. Was it the guy on the news last night? Because they tend to show us and bad content. You know, who was it that you saw? Because you don't know me, so you did not see me. So we both learned something from that. And we were able to have a conversation and keep in touch with each other. But it's all about, for me, you know, looking at seeing the whole person, allowing the whole person to come into the conversation, and not drawing conclusions and assumptions, you know, from the very beginning.
You know, that's so important. That is so important because I think part of that is it's at least for me and what I observed, there's us in our communication in general, how we communicate. One thing I became very present to is I know I was a nerd. I am a nerd. I can tend to use words. So when I was a kid, I read the dictionary. So when I speak, I'm speaking in terms of a dictionary definition, right? Because in my brain, that's the reason why there's a dictionary, so that when we use language, we all know what that person means. But now we're really living in an age with social media where people are creating their own definitions of practically everything. So, you know, it makes it a little bit more difficult when we see each other, becoming aware that there's these filters that we see each other through. So what I see, at least with some of the young folks I deal with, what I've experienced myself is when you know that you're confronted with that, how do you make that shift? You know, you make the shift from, we're talking about appreciative inquiry, right? But how do we make the shift from focusing on this is the problem that I have, and this is how people see me, and this is all going to prevent me from reaching my goals and opportunities. How do we make that shift into, I can use something like appreciative inquiry to actually accomplish what I want in my personal life and in my business?
Or it's to take this, I mean, the opportunity that Clyde took in this story. Most of us hear that story and we kind of know where it's headed, right? But we don't then think that there can be a continued relationship there.
Yes.
And this is where AI does come into play, to take this very painful situation and turn it into an opportunity for continued engagement, that you take that extra kind of leap to say, let me see if there's a story, if there's a connection here, and can we change the story or end the story in a different kind of way? And that's the biggest opportunity that I see, is that stories are really powerful. All of us have stories that have impacted who we are and what we do. And if we can tell those stories, which is also connected to what happens at the Chicago dinners, the dinners aren't meant for anybody to hear facts. The dinners are meant for people to tell their stories. And so people come and they tell their stories, and even though some of them are difficult and you're like, oh my gosh, really? Did they just say racism doesn't exist? But that's that person's lived experience. That's their story.
Right.
They might not, they don't, for whatever has helped them not see it. But for me, that's not my story, right?
Right.
And that's really the purpose of it in that beginning, is just to know that stories make a difference. How we use the story is a difference, and that you use the story as an opportunity to say, okay, so you just used a word that, back in the day used to mean cool, and now it doesn't. So what does it mean to you now? And to have a story connected to that, because that's what we kind of live with. That's our humanity at our best.
It is. I learned a lot at that dinner. Now, interestingly enough, interestingly enough, there were just three of us at the table, and I was the only person of color.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened.
Right. We had some 20 people or whatever, but at your table, you were the only person of color.
The only black person at the table.
I think what helped me was just knowing that any conversation that I come to is just realizing that I have a filter. And my filter is my experiences, my neighborhood, my culture, the information that I was given, even though a lot of it is incorrect. So that's the first thing I lead with, and just recognizing that I do have this filter and that I need to challenge my filter and not lead with my filter.
And that's just where I was going. I was going to say, get out of my head. How'd you get in there? That's just where I was going with that. Because I sat down and I already explained when I walked in the door, I wasn't sure what I was going to see, what I was going to be dealing with. So I didn't know. And I've had a lot of racially, from the very first grade, since before the first grade. I grew up in the military. My dad was in the Air Force, and so he was stationed out in Kinchlow Air Force Base out in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. And I remember being very small. I remember this distinctly, and I wasn't 5 yet, which tells you how impactful it was. But this white boy, he beat me up, kicked me off the swing, and pushed me and punched me, and I went home crying, and I told my two older brothers, and my brother Tony came out, I was born, this is in the 70s, so they just let the kids fight it out. Nobody was carrying guns and knives. The whole neighborhood gathered around and watched the kids fight it out, and I watched my brother fight for me. But when he kicked me off the swing, he called me the N-word. So those experiences have been happening. I remember from before then. I remember my first grade teacher calling me the N-word. I remember it's been a series, and a lot of it happened in the educational system. So by the time I'm an adult, I'm very aware. That was part of my story. I shared, I'm very aware that I do have a filter, because now when it comes to is it rational? Probably not. But I know when it comes to dealing with white people, I feel like, can I trust you? Can I not? I feel like I have to have a sense of who you are before I can let my guard down. Right. And I know that's what my filter is. So when I sat at that table, it was kind of, okay. Yeah. Right. But then we sat down and talked and discussed, and I heard bias. I did hear the bias. But I also was very aware that this person came specifically that table to get some questions answered, because they really wanted to hear what's going on. But we have to go to break. So as soon as we come right back from break, we're gonna have more great discussion with Dynamics of Dialogue.
IBNXradio.com. The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music. Hey, what's up? It's Jay-Z.
Hey, I'm Mariah Carey.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
It's your boy T.I.P., man. Get in. It's your boy Sean Kingston.
What's up, y'all? I'm Beyonce.
This is Nicki Minaj, and I'm in the mix with
IBNX Radio.
Life comes at us fast. One thing that gives us comfort is knowing that someone is there when you need them. Well, at Pleasant Hills Insurance, that's our promise to our clients. Call 770-910-7460 today or visit our website at pleasanthillsinsurance.com for your free, no obligations quote on retirement and life insurance. Many of the large agencies have turned their back on the retired workforce. At Pleasant Hills Insurance, if others can't qualify you, very often we can. Pleasant Hills Insurance proudly provides options for preconditions. So call 770-910-7460 or visit pleasanthillsinsurance.com today for your free, no obligations quote on retirement and life insurance. Pleasant Hills Insurance. We're here when you need us.
Shout out to Lady Lady. Now I know, there she go, pay up.
I love you, I love you, I love you. Until I love you, I love you, I love you.
Until I find a way.
Words I know that you
Until I find a way. Listen, I know you see it, girl. This ain't sitting real good in my soul. Everywhere this little girl goes, she pick up another obstacle. She was my heart. I don't know the tribe or default, but by default, she don't think of me. I thought she was an Indian. Now she's slanging things like a simian. All my life I wanted me an Indian, but now she's far away. But I had to know. Yeah. Listen, I know you see it, girl. This ain't sitting real good in my soul. Everywhere this little girl goes, she pick up another obstacle. She was my heart. I don't know the tribe or default. Yeah. But by default, she don't think of me. I thought she was an Indian, but now she's slanging things like a simian. All my life I wanted me an Indian. Yeah. Ooh, girl, let me hear. In the street with a wedding ring, and she hit the Park City bake. Are you down to cheat? He looked in the eye, chivalry. Is it really there? He pulled out a tip, pay up, jumping right on him. Thinking ways it good to intervene, and I lost her. Lost her to the world and the girls and the posters. Entertain, I doubt it'll pay and it cost her. I ain't mad at me, but it hurts. And I thought she was an Indian. Yeah, but now she only worried about the Benjamins. Yeah. She been lurking in my dreams. Yeah. I said I swear to die is on me, but I had to know. I said I swear to die is on me. Yeah. I swear this is me playing saxophone, but my saxophone was left at home, so I just got this. I said I swear to die is on me.
I need you, I need you, I need you. I need to make you see what you mean to me. Until I feel I'm open, you will know what I mean.
So I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. So I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. So I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. So I love it, I love it, love it, I love it.
Look, my girl trippin' said I treat her like a groupie, but I never took a groupie out to eat. See, I've been ballin', I've been poppin', I've been bubblin', I've been buzzin' in my city. Women love me, think I'm pretty, and they confirm it whenever they see me in person. If I said it, I meant it, I said it on purpose. Don't sleep on that furnace, cause boy, we hot. And then my job to make you think and make music that you feel, then these songs should make you sing. Oh, oh, oh. I Guess we never know what we need to know or where we need to go. Mind it right, feel like I'm Ichiro. I shed light, they need to grow. Fuck them all, fuck they friends, fuck they car, fuck your bread, fuck your blog. It save money, we an army full of generals. Here to push the envelope and change what they think. It's my job to make them think and make music that they feel. So these songs make them sing like where the end will go, will I ever know? Heaven only knows. Where the end will go, will I ever know? Heaven only knows.
So I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. So I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. So I love it, I love it, love it, I love it, love it, I love it. I love it.
If I drop it, they gonna cop it. I might start a non-for-profit. My papa said, Chancellor, I am so proud of you. Like my beast, they made all of them. Keep my feet on the ottoman. I just might run for alderman. You got power too. Speak that rap, put a message in. It's that sugary medicine. Feel like the intro, but better than it's ever been. Jumping like checkers, clever like chesses, smoking like purpose, perfect like surface, deeper than surface. Anxious and nervous, the world isn't flat. It's sharp as a circus. I'm starving like sharks. It's just looking for surface. I'm not in the industry, not in the service, not in the retail. Not in my knowledge, neglecting the detail. I'm only beginning, behold magnificence. Brown skin black boy with his red hair friends calling omnipotent. You choke like cinnamon, you broke up in a mint. Drop that send 197 at your fucking airport. To have the hottest tape of 2015, it's stupid.
Listeners, attention.
This song is already so hot.
When I give you the command to fall out, I want you to fall in on those yellow footprints with your head nod straight forward. You understand me? Because you're listening to Dynamics of Dialogue on IBNXRadioNetwork.com. Your dynamic, your dialogue.
Hey, welcome back to Dynamics of Dialogue. And we were just having some great conversation here in the studio during break. So, before we go any further, because we were talking about how much our filter, our culture, our perspective has to do with our culture and our background. And it wasn't until just last week that I really became present to what it means to kind of be, I recognize that I have a West Indian heritage as well, but I've never categorized myself as an Afro-Caribbean kind of person. But I heard Clyde over here talking about where he's from and some of his experiences. I thought that'd be worth to dig into a little bit. Clyde, you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you came up?
Oh, okay. I'm from New York. I actually thought I was born in New York, but I was born in South Carolina. I went to New York when I was less than a month old. And
what part of New York?
Long Island,
okay,
Garden
Island.
City Park. But I've lived in all the boroughs. But I grew up there, so that's part of who I am, and that's part of what I lead with. And I never knew that. In every conversation I show up to, that I bring that with me, and that's in the forefront of me. And until I started realizing, that a lot of that information that I was given through trusted sources is false information. And so I had to re-examine and take a look at my filter and just kind of challenge the information that was coming in, because a lot of the information was good information. But when I took it in and it didn't match my core beliefs, I was like, man, take that somewhere else. I don't want to hear that.
Right, and the other challenge I have is I grew up, I'm all over, right? I was born in California and moved all over. But when we settled, the first place we settled out of the military was in New York, in the Bronx. So I grew up right off of Perry Avenue. That's where we moved. My grandmother had a house over there off of Perry Avenue, and then we moved over to Laconia off White Plains Road. And so what I've come to realize is that I had the same thing, right? That's a part of how I think. So like we coming to the South, people are like, New Yorkers, they're so cruel, they're so mean, they're so rude, you know, this and the third. But as a New Yorker, it's a different culture than it is in the South. So when people are coming up to you, you're always on the lookout, because like in those movies, those are not extras. The streets are really that crowded. They really are that crowded. And you know, and there's somebody always pressed against you. That's why we value our personal space. So, but now appreciative inquiry helps with understanding that, right? Understanding where a person comes from. Because now when I know that you're from New York, and I know New York, that I understand that tells me how I can interact with you on one level, to a little bit. It gives me a little insight. Whereas Dr. Hawkins, you're from where?
Well, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. That was, and I often tell people I grew up in this town that's called Whitehaven, that most people want to call Black Haven because, you know, white people don't live there anymore. But when you were talking about culture and where you grow up and all these different pieces, many people experience like diversity trainings, or we want to have we hear people tell us that we want to have an honest dialogue about race. And I often wonder, what do they mean by that? You know, and there's this experience or this feeling like we've been talking about this stuff for a really long time. And it's true. We have been talking about this stuff for a really long time. I was going back and rereading Martin Luther King's Birmingham letter. And there's so much that's packed in there. And one of the pieces of wisdom is that we can't do any of this work alone, right? And that's what brings me back again to AI and to sort of using this approach with understanding the importance of cultures and dynamics and people, just thinking about people. And so do we tell enough of the stories about everybody that helped us? And do we tell some of the stories about the people who did not want desegregation? Because in some ways, we need to be more realistic about when we desegregated, it really hurt the Black community. Right? There was a
say that again. That's
you know, my grandfather was a business owner in Memphis, and he knew that once we desegregated, the white people weren't going to be flooding his business. You know, but when the Black community had been told it's so much better over there, that would be part of what happened. And the policies and things that took place, especially if you think about education, we had all these wonderful Black educators who had put themselves through school, and many of those were my ancestors, my aunts. You know, two of my aunts put themselves financially through Columbia, right, in New York. They were able to do that. They worked their way through that. But when you desegregated, then the qualifications changed, and then they were cut out of being able to be the educators that they had been in our Black communities. So we lost a wealth. You know, we're still just starting to see numbers coming back related to that, and it's very difficult. When I go places, I often would give talks, and people would want to tell me, "Oh, we've arrived," and I would say, "Oh, that's great. How many other Black doctors do you know?"
Yeah,
and they'd be like, "Oh,
but what is
you're the first one I've met." Oh, you know. But I don't. Again, my shift was, instead of being angry about that, and instead of having, you know, things kind of stop the conversations and create a space in which I'd feel dismayed. I really I search for something else that helps me to still have hope. And I think a combination of working with people who are in recovery and knowing that, you know, even in your darkest hour, there's still hope to keep moving forward, that gives me hope in the work that we're doing, and the resilience of our community. So being able to embrace your, you know, Caribbean background as well as your Black background. I went to school in New Jersey as well, and went to school in Chicago. And at first, you know, in Memphis, we were really indoctrinated to be African Americans. My grandmother was like, "You're a Negro. What are you talking about?" She was born in 1901. Okay, she lived to be 100. But then I went to New Jersey, and we were all Black as a way to be more inclusive. And I really had to learn that was an opportunity to be more inclusive and to think about us as a diaspora, you know, and the gifts that are there. So there's a lot that can go into all of this.
It is. When I think when you said that, it brought back to memory. I when I ordered a copy of my birth certificate, I realized my birth certificate says that I'm Negro.
Right.
Yeah, born in California, 1970, as a Negro.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to put that. I'm going to just take that piece out and put it on the wall somewhere.
Right.
You know, but I realized how. I'm sorry, I'm going to go to you, but I realized how much of what you said is you're from Memphis, Tennessee.
Yes.
Where Dr. King was assassinated.
Yes.
And through the work that I do with Black Week Speak, we embrace his concept of beloved community. So it wasn't until I heard you mention something the other day, then I listened to you speak now. So much of what you said is in line with that. And so as I listen to each of us talk, where we're from is definitely reflected in who we are. I'm sorry, what were you going to say, Deidre? I'm sorry, Deidre.
Yes.
I'm looking
Our
at you.
names, it's all right.
It's okay. We're one person. Adria Deidre.
Well, in a way, kind of, because now I might as well just call you Deidre, because I gotta get your schedule, you know, all of your planning, the schedule, everything. I go to Adria.
So did you ask Adria?
And now Clyde.
She's the go-to.
Oh no, I was just going to add in because we're talking about this mix that Deidre has around cultural agility,
yes,
and the AI process, and how important that is. Because when we talk about evolution, like we're always talking about evolving ourselves, right? Becoming better people, our own self-development, and you have to have a proper container, right, in which to do that for not just yourself, but for organizations as well. And that's why AI in this mix works, because it's a proper container to hold evolution, which can be a messy process. It's not a linear process, as some of what we talked about
right.
over the last 3 days, right? That evolution itself is not a linear process.
Nope.
We cannot evolve ourselves and become this new being or whoever we want to become in a linear process. It happens in a very, in many ways, can be chaotic,
organic.
right? Or organic way. And so you need a proper container to hold that space. And that's probably why I was so aligned, like, with her work, because that's, you know, when she said magic, like, that's the word, you know, I use a lot in my work, is that it really is kind of a magical thing that happens. But it is magic when you allow things to organically occur, right? But you just hold the space for them to occur. You're actually not controlling them.
Right.
You're actually just facilitating the process.
And that's where I'm learning now.
Right.
That's what you do, how to learning how to hold the space for
and
them
that's why it's so
to-
important to be aware of your filters, right?
Yeah.
To be aware of your filters, aware of what's happening, to ask the right questions, to let things just happen, to not answer all the questions, because by answering all the questions, you're actually controlling the process.
And not only do you control the process, it seems as though, at least for me, what I find is if I have a goal for a specific thing, a particular thing, and someone starts asking questions and I'm trying to illustrate the vision, then it distracts me.
Yes.
It takes me off track and I get frustrated. And so I started to see when we were still laughing about that yesterday over the course of the last 3 days of last week of the question and answer process, because it's just, you know, Dr. Hawkins has this masterful way of answering a question. I don't know how
That's
to
very
call it.
good. We won't give that away.
Right. We won't tell what that
I
is.
would just say, it's
a
just
running
masterful.
joke.
But it helps, because again, you don't help people when you answer all these questions for them, right?
No,
You take away their thought, their process, right? They have to have an opportunity to see it,
Right.
and they're not going to see it if you're telling it to them.
And everybody is always asking, well, we need people to buy in.
Yeah.
Right. And how am I going to get someone to buy in? How do I get leadership to buy in? You know, and the assumption about, you know, big change or making making things better is that we need the top leadership to buy in. I've been lots of places and that's not true. And that, you know, change can happen anywhere. You just need to find that opening for where their change can take place.
Right.
We don't, you know, most of us don't do things just because they're the right things to do.
Right.
And trying to tell someone what to do does not help them do what they need to do. Many of us know exactly what to do. Knowing better does not mean that we do things better. And you know, there's so much evidence to that. But what we do, most everybody will show up for the things they care about. Most everybody will show up for the things they're passionate about. And most everybody will stick with things. You know, if you're in a job and you're making good money, but you're not passionate about it, it wears at you. It tears
Mm-hmm.
at your soul. And so really it's the work of all of us is to find the things that give us life and that we have some balance. So I always tell people, I'm not saying don't make money. I want people to learn how to do that. I'm actually very good at leading people through a process of figuring out how do you set that goal? How do you figure out what that means? Using AI, like what in the time that you've ever had a career have you done well and made a lot of money? What helped you do that? Like really, what helped you do that? And most people want to tell you what happened and why things got wrong and what, but to really think about like all the circumstances that helped that happen, and then to find ways that you can replicate that. But ultimately, what I find is that seeing is believing, and people need to feel like things are real, and they need to have a real idea of where you're trying to go. And the best way to do that is to be able to tell a vivid story.
Right.
The best way to do that is to show up and be present. And some of the best ways to do this is to do it with other people.
Yes.
And that you just can't do it alone. There's nothing that anybody has ever done from landing on the moon to,
You can't do it
really,
alone.
you can't just do there's nothing you can do alone.
And I'm learning that
successfully.
even in my own transformative process of setting boundaries, and I'm just going to use that as something very practical to illustrate for other people how, we like to think that we live on an island and I can do it by myself and I don't need this and I don't need that. But say, for example, when people are so accustomed, they look at me as a superwoman. I can do this, I can do that. And lots of times people don't accept it. There are lots of spaces where I'm just not there. I can't. I literally, and it doesn't mean that I can't forever. It just means that right now, for the next 48 hours, my brain capacity is at 50 and it's not at 100, and I need a break. And so I need the people around me to accept that. I'm checking out. Put the curtains down, the store is closed.
Right.
So I need them to facilitate that by accepting that change and not fighting it. For whatever that we do, even decisions that we make for ourselves, the people around us that are important to us, that support us, have to buy into that and understand that.
And so AI will help create a space for
It
that by
does.
making sure that the people who are around you are around you for similar passions, that they're aware. And it's language we've often said, so what's your agenda? Everybody has an agenda that they show up with. But I'm not mad about you having an agenda. That's the difference. I want to know what your agenda is. If you want to get paid, I'm cool with that too.
Let's do it together.
Yeah, let's find a way to do that. I don't have any problem with people showing up with what matters to them, if we can put those things on the table. So it's learning to have a little bit of a different conversation. And so those real conversations that people want to have, to what end? Is it you just want to yell at somebody? And do you see that actually moving you to the next thing? So the genesis behind One Small Change, in terms of the name of that, is recognizing that there is often one little thing that we can do that can have a really big impact.
Right.
And often that big thing is to ask a different question and to actually stop long enough to hear the answer. Like that's the next part. You can't just ask the question. You actually have to stop and hear the answer, and let the answer be what it is. But it's funny for me when I think about how much of a fluid process this can be, and how challenging it can be for people, because I've been doing this for so long now that it's really just kind of
organic.
It's part of who I am, to start to ask those questions. And it does take, I think we've been talking about this for about a year at least, and maybe that's what I should assume at this point, that it takes about a year to kind of get it, to be like okay, but the good thing about that is, most people in that process, once they get it, then you sort of can't go back.
Yeah. You can't unsee it.
You've kind of, you've swallowed the pill now. This is the Matrix, and it's like, okay.
Right. But the good part about it is that by the time you get it, it's like, and you kind of think about it, because maybe it does take that long, because really in the movie, that was a series, right?
Yeah.
It was a series. But by the time you get it, you got it. Yeah. And you're able to execute. You're able to actually see it and envision it. And I can't, I can't, we have to talk because just after this past weekend, I came to so many realizations that although they may be difficult, I understand what they are. And I know it's prevented me literally from making another mistake, repeating another mistake already. And this is, we left Friday and today is Sunday.
It takes practice like everything else, right? So that it becomes organic when you consciously say, okay, let me stop and ask a different question.
Ask the different
question.
question.
I mean, but it takes practice. It's not going to be automatic. So tomorrow you might actually go down a different path, but if you consciously say, okay, so let me think about what I learned. Let me just sit there and be intentional about what you're asking and what you're saying.
You learn how to ask the right questions.
Yes.
And that's where I'm getting. And you made such a great segue because I was just going to ask you all to talk a little bit more in detail about what you do with One Small Change and both of them partners. So if you would, so you kind of covered a little bit of One Small Change.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you want to cover with that?
Well, what I was thinking is we've been talking about this 3-day thing and we didn't say what it was.
So I have my book. Right, so
it's no book of life.
I know, I live in my head sometimes. So I have this book. So for the past 3 days, Dr. Hawkins, listen, when Clyde says, Clyde, you want to do your introduction? You were supposed to do an introduction to what type of ladies these are. When we came back on the microphone, can we just pause for a second so Clyde can you just speak a little bit about the greatness of these two ladies here, please?
Well, I have the opportunity to work with some amazing women. They do so much, and they are in support of so many different people because of the way that they are. I often kid with Adria, that she has about 15 jobs, because of all the things that she does. And but they're very purposeful at what they do, and they're very intentional at what they do, and they're in support of people. They love people, and they found their passion, and I think that's what it's all about. Finding out what you would do for free and doing that, and probably you've already been doing it. It's just that now you get paid for it.
That's right.
So that's what they do. They support people right where they're at, not where we would have them to be, right where they're at. And then they ask the right questions. What are you passionate about? What is working?
Yes.
And then they build off of that.
And I would agree. I would have to agree. So I have the pleasure of attending this guided organizational leadership workshop, and it's about maximizing your organization's internal assets. This was a 3-day leadership institute from the 18th to the 20th that Dr. Hawkins, both in partners with Adria Kitchens, put together. And I got to tell you that, I sat there for the first, couple of days. It was difficult because to make that shift from linear thinking, I'm a very linear thinker. I'm an analyst, been in IT for 20 some odd years. On the other half, I'm a creative, but my thinking process tends to be very linear, and even in that creation. So to sit there and learn through this transformative way of thinking, of learning how to ask the right questions so that I can actually accomplish what it is that I was trying to do, all of a sudden it opened up this totally new perspective. And it wasn't about necessarily thinking through everything with my mind. It was about hearing. It was in the stories. It was in hearing the stories and just listening to that. It was in asking the right questions that changed. It wasn't about thinking. Usually I go into something like that and I'm focused on just taking notes.
Right.
And when I changed that focus, I came away with so much.
Well, we really set up, I get requests all the time to come in for an hour or two, or, can't we do this in this amount of time? And you could give the information away in that amount of time. But if you don't give people a chance to sit with it and explore it and experience it, then it doesn't become who they are. And that's really what we set out to do, is to create that container, in that space that we know most leaders don't give themselves. And so I tell people all the time that if you feel like you would like to actually do your job when you show up for your job, then this is what you want to do. Because most of us who are very capable and experienced and good problem solvers end up having to do 3 other jobs And then when everybody else goes home, we get to do our job.
Yeah.
And that's actually not sustainable, meaning
No.
that it's going to burn you out, meaning that
Yes.
you won't be able to pass it on. Now, some people won't like that, you know? So if you're interested in wanting to pass it on, it's only for that. It's not for the people who like it. You know, then this is the approach that can help you with that process. We do this in terms of leadership because there are a number of people who are in leadership positions who are asking the question, how do I build something that when I leave, it continues to move forward, that it continues to sustain, that it doesn't depend on me? And I have fortunately had a number of projects that I hear about later that I haven't even been, you know, back in that state or that community in 7 or 8 years, and hear that things are still continuing. And so it's good that I get, you know, here and there every week or 2 weeks or so, I'll hear some story that lets me know that the work is still continuing and that I'm still doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. In doing that, we had an opportunity to connect with the Mayor's Office of Resilience. The City of Atlanta has received a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation that helps it become a resilient city. And one of the arms of that resilience is looking at race equity. And so we have a program, an initiative called Imagine 50/50. And so we are pushing that along, and it includes all of these different things, from helping people be leaders so that they can ask these courageous questions, because that's the next piece. It's not just asking the right question, it's a courageous question, because you have to be willing to hear the truth of somebody else's story. You know, you have to be willing to hear that maybe they've been hurt in some way that you might have even been complicit in. And what will you then do out of that, right, moving forward? So we'll have opportunities to help leaders be able to be vulnerable and courageous and ask some different questions. That's one. We're going to have some opportunities for people to come and share their stories and have them be recorded, similar to what we're doing right here in a dialogue, and recognizing that just because you're not getting a plaque, your story, your experience of being the first or the second is important, and we need to hear those stories of what people have done to persevere. So we will be doing work around that and finding those stories and making that happen. And then we've got a lot more, because we just always keep growing and finding new opportunities. And we go wherever the doors are open and people are interested, because we believe in being AI in our work.
I cannot wait. Well, I'm telling you now, Black Week Speak is committing, Black Week Speak Atlanta is committing to hosting Chicago. Actually, if I can host more than one, I will. Yeah, because there's space here in Gwinnett. I know that I think will be. I know some spaces off the top that I've used in the past that I think would be great to help that happen.
Wonderful.
The Resilience Atlanta. I again, you know, I wear many hats. So I don't know if you know, on social media I go by Rebel Queen as a spoken word artist. That's what I use there, and I'm also a regional director for Black Week Speak Social Justice Human Rights Council. And that Dr. Hawkins invited me into that space to participate with Resilience Atlanta, and just you know, working within the activist community. Lots of us feel, I think a lot of people feel hopeless
and isolated,
feeling like there's no point in trying because they're just going to change it. They're just going to stop it.
Right.
And I can't speak enough to the fact that if there's nothing that we do, keeping the hope that we have the ability to change is important. I had the opportunity of meeting Kathleen Cleaver, former communications secretary for Black Panther Party of Defense. And I asked her, and I say, because I tell this story often, what advice would you give to young people who are angry, rightfully so? And she told me then that anger is for people who believe they can't do anything. So understanding that, taking the opportunity to embrace concepts like appreciative inquiry. I didn't know that that's what you were really walking me through when we were going through that thing last year. I didn't know that I've been using it in small increments, but I can see where it's created space for me to go in places and have conversations.
I really love what you're saying about that anger piece, because we had some young women show up at a Chicago dinner recently, African American women, very, very, very smart. Had gone to like Georgia Tech and Emory, and done very well. And they were in their early careers, and they were starting to notice right? The way our country really works. And they were angry because they're like, you know, we grew up hearing that we could do anything. We grew up really, you know, being encouraged to go for our dreams and do the things that we wanted to do. And they got sort of a story that they could do it on their own.
Yeah.
And so now they're hitting a brick wall and they're like angry, don't want to talk to anybody. And and even said to me, you know, well, we're really glad to see that there's someone like you doing this work, but we don't think we can do this. There's no way that I would be able to have that story. So for me, though, I'm grateful that they decided to show up, because the first thing in a Chicago dinner, and actually the main outcome, or the thing that we're working toward, is will people show up?
Yeah.
Showing up meaning so much more than actually having like an outcome and a story and a plan. That will be important. So I think the more we can talk about, it's okay to be angry. What are you going to do with the anger?
Yes,
right?
you have to do something with it.
What do we want to do with that? And what is it that, you know, what does give you, when you're feeling good, what helps you feel that way? And when you're feeling angry, what leads to that as well? But if you don't have the first question, if we don't know the things that help first, then it's very difficult to get to the things that will actually give us, you know, momentum to move forward.
You get stuck in that anger.
Yes.
And I know that's what led me again to come to that event last year. I was angry. I mentioned, I'm not sure if I told this part of the story on the air before, but I had met Chief Ayers the previous year at the grand jury reform event, and specifically approached him to ask him. It was not too long after, boy, those names are so hard to say. I don't even like saying it anymore because it's so difficult. It's a little bit traumatic to go over, even to mention the names of people who have been murdered at the hands of. But at any hand, I asked about what is Gwinnett County doing, and he mentioned that they had a training program, a cultural sensitivity training program, and then shortly a year later, we had this incident happen. And that, because I was able, had I just gotten on the phone or written a really nasty letter to the chief, he wouldn't have met with me.
Right.
But I had to bring to his remembrance that I met him at the grand jury reform, and I had to say, this is the question I asked you. And I didn't know that that's what I was using in there.
When it's working.
But it worked, and it created dialogue, and it was hard because most people look at it like, well, why do you want to go in there?
Right.
But I needed answers, and I'm not going to get answers without having conversation. And
I was just going to say, I like what both of you are speaking to, because part of it's this idea that we actually don't ever get the whole story, that we haven't heard the whole story when she was talking about the young women, because they actually missed a part of the story. So somehow we missed telling them a piece of the story, right? In terms of resilience and being able to do this with people, and that you don't do this alone. It's not you're not just breaking barriers by yourself. We're all actually in formation together and doing this together. So, and I think that's what you're speaking to, is the process of AI and adding in that cultural filter piece is so important in terms of being able to hear the whole story. So that even in your anger, can I listen to someone else's story that I may not agree with, so that I can hear actually everything and make an informed decision about how we can work together.
And not assume that person, just because I think sometimes that lack of hearing comes from the assumption that person is lying.
Well, I was going to ask you if you've had an opportunity to share with your listeners the difference between dialogue and debate.
Yes.
Because that, if I only have a little bit of time when I get to meet with people, just reading a chart that says the difference between dialogue and debate, which we might be able to do, makes such a difference, because so many of us are actually trained in debate.
Yep.
We are not trained in dialogue.
Me. I was trained.
I was on the debate team.
I was on the debate team. I won the debate trophy as a freshman in a class full of seniors.
Yes, Deidre.
That was me, and I still have my debate trophy. Thank you. That's my trophy, and I was sick too as a freshman. Yes, and I beat all of some seniors.
You're like, I could do that. I could shut down a conversation.
That's right. But now what I had to learn, because that was the trophy. You hear? I got in school. I got a trophy for that, because that's what we were taught to do.
Yes.
But now, I, as an adult, I realize, hey, There's a difference. And because I can shut it down.
Right.
But now,
right.
but then
But
you
how to
don't
keep it
accomplish
open.
anything
Right.
when you do that. We're going to go to break, and when we come right back, we're going to have more dynamic dialogue. I thought David, I was waiting for him. He gave me my 5-minute cue, and I was waiting to get like a 1-minute cue.
IBNXradio.com. The station with the best music. Best music.
I love the music.
Best music.
Hey, what's up? It's Jay-Z. Hey, I'm Mariah Carey.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
It's your boy T.I.P. man. Get in.
It's your boy Sean Kingston.
What's up, y'all? I'm Beyonce.
You're not listening to Word of Mind Radio. You're seriously listening. Hosts Trey Grizzy and Nine Ether share their perspectives on everything from social issues that affect our communities to relationships and trends that affect us all. Guaranteed to teach you something new. Word of Mind is engaging.
The only way that we can do this is do it together. So I love you.
We all love you for sharing.
Empowering.
Somebody dropped the ball somewhere because we want our kids to forget the struggles that we went through. But the struggles that we went through is what got us to where we are now.
And definitely entertaining.
She probably got one of them wholesome names like Gertrude, but back in the day they called her Gertie. They called her
Dirty Gertie.
Dirty Gertie. Flirty Gertie. You know what I mean?
Oh, y'all are horrible.
Yeah.
Tune in and learn up every Tuesday from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
You so fine, baby. Hello, queen. I see something as pretty as Africa in your jeans. And what I mean by that is what's packing inside them seams. It's magic inside them veins, the passion in your bloodstream. Them juicy lips, you make a couple happy every time you take a sip. And when a man embraces you, he has to hold a grip, or he'll fall down and go to sleep from the big pillows that he kissed. That silky hair, no white folk call it nappy, they can't help but stop and stare. You ask me and I tell you that self-love is very rare, so whatever you wanna call it, I applaud it, fist in air. That healthy butt, every time you sway them hips, all of the niggas fall in love. Big as all our doors and soft as cotton to the touch, that apple bottom must be bitten, ooh, that rump give me a rush. I love the way your melanin pop. I said I love the way your melanin pop. I love the way your melanin pop. Oh, I love the way your melanin pop. You so fine, you so fine, you so fine, baby. You so fine, you so fine, baby. I said you so fine, you so fine, you so fine, baby. You so fine, baby.
Look, yeah, I like your skin tone. I like the way your hair move when the wind blow. I like how you never get these niggas any info. You just let them guess. Why you at it with that sundress? You know what you're doing, don't be acting like you don't. Fully stacked from the back to the front. You don't even wear no makeup often. You just make these other girls wanna have what you got. I like my women with an attitude who like to talk real slick when they mad at you. I like girls that act like they never had a dude like. He ain't even half of you, don't gas me. Look at your melanin pop. Chocolate thing with a cherry on top. Yeah, rock the boat like a Leo on top. Pop that ass like you Susie Sundrop.
I love the way your melanin pop. I said I love the way your melanin pop. I love the way your melanin pop. Oh, I love the way your melanin pop. You so fine, you so fine, you so fine, baby. You so fine, you so fine, baby. I said you so fine, you so fine, you so fine, baby. You so fine, baby. Them Tego biddies, I'm joking, no offense, but on this subject, go here with me. You gave life to humanity and fed it with your chest, girl, regardless of the size, know that I love a woman's breast. That attitude, you cute when you be mad, you hella bad when you be rude. That sass might turn me on, I love the little things you do. Ooh, don't roll your neck like that, come on and meet me in this room. I love your vibe, the way the sun reflects off of your chocolate skin and eyes. We in a generation where society surprised when our people get together and make children of our kind. I love myself, I come from you and learn from you, you put me in good health. Won't run from you, say none to you to show no disrespect. I pray for you and yearn for you, black woman, you're so blessed. I love the way your melanin pop. I said I love the way your melanin pop.
Show me the light.
Your lips are mine, sweet like red wine, red wine. Your lips are mine, sweet like red wine, red wine. Your lips are mine, sweet like red wine, red wine.
So intoxicating.
Your lips are mine, sweet like red wine, red wine. Your lips are mine, sweet like red wine, red wine. Your lips are mine, sweet like red wine, red wine.
So intoxicating.
If you could see the thoughts in my mind, oh baby. How did I get here? When we're all alone, what I feel between me and you is the force that pulls me to you. And I can't deny that I really like that. Your lips are mine, sweet like red wine, red wine. Your lips are mine, sweet like red wine, red wine. Your lips are mine, sweet like red wine, red wine.
I bet you never knew this song was about you. About you. It's written in your essence, you're the message in this bottle. It says you are
Intoxicating.
when we're all alone. I try to hide what I feel inside, but I just can't control. No, I just can't control. I'm in another zone when I kiss your lips, got me so gone. I need another sip, it's been too long. So don't be selfish, you know that I want
your lips on mine, sweet like red wine, red wine. Your lips on mine, sweet like red wine, red wine. Your lips on mine, sweet like red wine, red wine.
So intoxicating.
Your lips on mine, sweet like red wine, red wine. Your lips on mine, sweet like red wine, red wine. Your lips on mine, sweet like red wine, red wine.
Welcome to Dynamics of Dialogue. I am your hostess with the mostest, Rebel Queen, along with my co-host, Deliberately and Free to Love. We are all about stimulating intellectual conversation with a little bit of hood-rich reality in it. Come join us every Sunday from 1 to 3 on IBNXRadioNetwork.com. Welcome back to Dynamics of Dialogue. We're getting ready to wrap this show up with some great conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hope that you all have enjoyed this show so far.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I definitely have.
Good. I mean, this has been a great talk. We were just touching on the concept of dialogue versus debate. And I was, owning up to the fact that I am skilled. I'm a black belt in debate. Probably since I was in 9th grade, a black belt. So, but I would say I'm maybe I would say maybe I'm a yellow, somewhere between a yellow and a brown in dialogue. Because I do this, right? I have the conversation all day, right? And get engaged in this dialogue. So I would say I'm kind of getting in that kind of space. So I would like to ask someone to talk about the difference between dialogue versus debate for me.
Yeah, so we will do that. I'm going to do dialogue, and then Clyde can do debate.
Okay.
So dialogue is collaborative. Two or more sides work together toward common understanding.
Debate is oppositional. Two sides opposing each other and attempt to prove each other wrong.
Dialogue finds common ground. Finding common ground is the goal.
Debate winning is the goal.
In dialogue, one listens to the other side in order to understand, find meaning, and find agreement.
In debate, one listens to the other side in order to find flaws and to counter its arguments.
In dialogue enlarges and possibly changes a participant's point of view.
Debate affirms a participant's own point of view.
Dialogue reveals assumptions for reevaluation.
Debate defends assumptions as truth.
Dialogue causes introspection on one's own position.
Debate causes critique of the other's position.
Dialogue opens the possibility of reaching a better solution than any of the original solutions.
Debate defends one's own position as the best solution and excludes other solutions.
Dialogue creates an open-minded attitude, an openness to being wrong, and an openness to change.
Debate creates a closed-minded attitude, a determination to be right.
In dialogue, one submits one's best thinking, knowing that other people's reflections will help improve it rather than destroy it.
In debate, one submits one's best thinking and defends it against challenge to show that it is right.
In dialogue, calls for temporarily suspending one's belief.
Debate calls for investing wholeheartedly in one's belief.
Dialogue searches for basic agreements.
In debate, one searches for glaring differences.
Dialogue searches for strengths in the other position.
In debate, one searches for flaws and weaknesses in the other's position.
Dialogue involves a real concern for the other person and seeks to not alienate or offend.
Debate involves a countering of the other positions without focusing on feelings or relationships, and often belittles or depreciates the other's person.
Dialogue assumes that many people have pieces of the answer and that together they can put them into a workable solution.
Debate assumes that there is a right answer and that someone has it.
Dialogue remains open-ended.
Debate implies a conclusion.
Okay, well that sounds interesting. So the couple of things that the critique, debate that stuck out to me about debate inspiring criticism, and I think that again, if you let's just get really basic. It's easier. What do they say? It's a whole lot easier to get something with sugar than it is with the other stuff. So if you want people to hear you and you're in a course of a conversation, then criticism doesn't really fit well into that space. So that's where if you need something, I think a dialogue is going to serve you better.
Well, dialogue has always been the heart of everything in our country, in any healing, in any. If you think about anything that ever gets done, it's done through dialogue, successfully. But what we learn when you watch TV, when you look at commercials, is people talking at you, or people giving you information.
Right.
We did a workshop not long ago, and we had a gentleman say, "You learn how to dialogue when you've been married for 10 years, and you decided you don't want to get a divorce." It was basically saying that, you don't get the skills of dialogue in school. You don't get the skills for learning how to listen to someone genuinely.
Right. Without an agenda.
Without an agenda, where you really learn that it doesn't have to be so difficult. And People will say to me and my family, I'll just like be real about this. I'm a psychologist, right? I don't do medication. I just, listen. But my family would be like, you're doing that psychology stuff on me. And I'm like, I'm listening, like, so it starts to feel different because I didn't like interrupt you, and I wasn't telling you what you should do. But so often, I don't know, I mean, most of us have had the experience that a friend calls and they want advice, and you start giving them the advice, and then they tell you everything wrong about why that won't work. Well, that's part of why we're really working to say that's not what people really want. They want to be heard and believed. And if you could just do that to start with, then we can kind of move things along.
Right. Because then that a question like a process of appreciative inquiry, it opens up space for conversation. It takes that person in their frustration out of that place because they do feel like they're being heard and believed. So it kind of works to eliminate that. And one of the things, again, I didn't realize, at work, we would have questions and supporting each other whenever we started the meeting. What's going good?
Yes.
What keeps you? What can be tweaked and what keeps you hopeful? And it does create a process where you start to change your perspective. So even though it may not stay at the forefront, it's there.
It's there.
You've got to start somewhere.
And it helps you to circle back in. So with the strategies that we try to teach people, there is a way in which you use that information. So you don't just collect it, because a lot of places will do that. They're like, well, we found out what people want, but then you don't do anything with it. And so that's the next piece of it, is like, you can't just ask the right question. You actually also have to do something with it. And you can't take it on and just do it all yourself, because nothing is really helpful without that. So the next thing that we try to really talk beyond is not just dialogue and asking the right question, but it's about being an ally. That means that you need other people with different skill sets to help you with things. And even if they come in and they have the same vision that you have, at least now you've got more than, many hands makes light work.
That's absolutely true. So I got to ask, because we're going to wrap up into soon, but I want to know, how can people, so we've talked about all of this great stuff about making this magic happen with this AI and this cultural competency and all this. So how do we, if we want to get connected to this work, how do we do that? And how do we get connected to Resilient Atlanta if we want to do that? How do we do this? How do we get connected?
I'm going to say Adrienne.
Beautiful. Great question. So one of the best ways to get connected with us is on our website. So Dietra's website is drDietra.com, and that's DRDIETRA.com. And we have a calendar of events up. We have our events that we will be doing at least over the next up until December. Up until next year, and we will be adding more. And then our One Small Change website is onesmallchangeinc.org. And we have our Chicago dinners monthly there. We also have a one-day cultural competency workshop that is based on Dietra's curriculum from her full two-day cultural competency workshop, where she supports those who have been through her facilitator training. She supports those coming out so that we can practice presenting the curriculum to people. And so those are on our website, on the One Small Change website as well. And all of those are free events. We have our Chicago dinners at All Saints. We have them in other places as well. But of course, with Imagine 50/50, we launched on April 4th. We will be having many more of those, and many more conversations and workshops on this appreciative approach, and using it especially in this race and racism conversation. So those are the best ways to get in touch with us right now.
Awesome.
Certainly send a message and be in touch with us, because we're happy to help. We really are looking for opportunities to enhance what other people are doing. So,
and we are on Facebook as well.
Awesome.
Just look up Dietra Hawkins or Adria Jordan Kitchens or Clyde Lloyd. We're all. You could message any three of us, and we will get the message to each other.
Okay, so you have a page for One Small Change, or both?
We do not. We work.
We have a dialogue for the dinners page, and then
Yes.
In the group. Okay. That sounds good. Well, I definitely want to, I've been wanting to do that cultural competency, but I had some technical difficulty last time. So, yeah, I think it was the audio or something I had going on. It was crazy.
Oh, right. We didn't even talk about the webinar.
Yeah, yes, and we have been doing an online webinar where you can see each other and talking about these various topics. And we've got people joining in from
all over the country.
Texas and other parts of the country.
Minnesota.
And we're looking to keep growing that. It's at this point, it's $65 for a 6-session webinar, and it's open to anyone. It's not, it's not like for therapists or any particular background. It's really for everybody.
We have an introductory session, 6 sessions, and then we have a deep dive, which I will tell you is like the most delicious conversation facilitated by Deetra. It's amazing, that deep dive, 6 sessions in which she really goes into the content. It's just amazing.
I can't wait. I want to check that out. That's going to be exciting. Yeah, because again, it feels, I know in this climate, with all of the things going on, I need to feel like I can do something, because I am a person who my filters are pretty heavy. I'm very aware of what they are. And I do have space. I know when I'm, sometimes I want to navigate around them, sometimes I don't.
Right.
Some things work for us.
Right.
That's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, I know that
as a parent, there are times in which we are not having a dialogue.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Right, exactly.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
And it's also not up for debate either.
We're doing neither.
Right, I'm telling you, it's it's you already, I know you know. So, but it is, but in this climate, I think it's important because like I said, from my perspective, a lot of the people that I talk to, the spaces I'm in, the consistent theme is, nothing changes. We don't, nothing happens. And the surest way to make sure nothing changes is to do nothing. If you can't control anything, you can control yourself. And it's not, the process, my process of change is kind of chaotic, kind of all over the place, but I know it's taking place. And it still feels good because I know that by being involved and learning these new tools, I have the ability to affect change for the things I want to see.
Yeah, and helping people realize that they have a circle of influence. Really, by asking a different question, there are people that we reach that we may not realize. I mean, Clyde hasn't spoken a whole lot, but the people that he will have in contact with in the grocery store and introduce an idea of, did you know that, in poverty, most people don't know how to tell a story from a beginning, a middle, and an end.
You mentioned that something the other day, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. You want to talk about that?
Well,
Please talk about that.
I
love it when he talks about that.
How we perform.
Right.
Yeah. The reason why I talk about it because it answered a lot of questions for me as to why people do different things, and in poverty, I want to know how much food am I getting for $5, whereas in middle class, I want to know how it tastes, and in wealth, I want to know how it's going to be presented to me. So, and then we have the other ones where, and poverty, money, I spend money because tomorrow isn't promised to me, so it's about right now. So I spend money. So in middle class, I manage money. And in wealth, I invest money. So, and it also kind of cleared up a few things when I got to talk to one of the officers over there when we were in Gwinnett. I was telling them, that in poverty, you ask me a question, my vocabulary is very limited, and you ask me a question, I run out of words, I start to perform, and I start to use my hands to perform. Yo, what's going on? What's up? What's this? What's that? And you just ask me to stay still, but you ask me a question, so I have no words, so I start to perform. And he was like, so that's what's happening. I said, yeah, well, in middle class, I can tell a story from beginning to end, and in wealth, what's the point? Do I need to call my lawyer?
Right. You illustrated that so beautifully. And that is such the point. That right there, see, this is why I love it when Clyde talks, because he just brought home the point of dialogue versus debate and illustrated. So now that was one police officer you talked to, but when that light bulb went off for him, when he goes out in the street now and sees somebody doing all of this, he might not be so triggered. He might not be so concerned about fear and recognize this is a lack. I don't have the language, and I'm using this as a form of expression.
Exactly.
You know,
Cultural agility.
The cultural agility, and that's why dialogue is so important.
Yes.
Because now he would not have heard that
Right.
if you had approached him in a confrontational manner. And when you, at the end of the day, if you know your goal is to be heard, then it makes you change the way you're going to deliver.
Yes.
Yeah, that was excellent. That's fantastic. I love it. I'm just immensely happy that you all came in the studio today and we had this great conversation because my gosh, it's
thanks for inviting us.
Thank
Ty.
you.
That's what it's all about.
Right.
It's being invitational.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
knowing that people will show up and
Yep.
trusting the process. So
Yeah,
it was
process.
beautiful.
Yeah. She's always trying to talk about me trusting the process. And I'm like,
There we go.
It is.
I'm not
It
there
really
yet.
is.
Yes.
Oh,
Surrender.
You
Surrendering
showed
to
up.
the
It's
process.
there.
I'm working on it. Oh my
Yes.
God. I'm so working on it. I know I'm going to have to go home and surrender to my eyelids in a little while.
That's true.
These allergies have been driving me crazy. And this has been a pretty challenging season for me.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm just excited. So we had another great show. I've got to have you guys back on.
Happy to come on.
Would
Happy
love
to answer
to.
questions.
Yes, and
Yes.
when we come back on
Well,
this time, yes.
Some questions.
Some questions. But this time, I think when we come
I'll
back
at least
on,
tell a story.
yes, definitely we want to put the conversation around mental health, and to get into that kind of
That'd
space.
be beautiful.
And because I would love for Clyde to share his story. I will share mine. Oh boy, in part, I have to think about it. I have to still rewrite it. I have to still get back down to respect,
Sure.
and get some coaching with
Well,
me.
you might have another frame to offer now.
Yeah.
That's right.
What's working?
That's
what can be
right.
better? What keeps you moving?
I got it. Well, I know part of what keeps me hopeful is sitting right behind that
That's
glass.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Both of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
it's exciting. So once again, I am so glad that you all came in here, and we're gonna have another great topic next week. Next Sunday, we're gonna have our first Sister Circle Sunday. We've got some
excellent.
women coming in. There's a lot of energy that and connection and healing power. I know I feel being around Black women.
Oh, yes.
Because who else identifies with what I'm going through than another Black woman?
Yes.
So we're gonna have that conversation. So I hope I can get you guys to tune in, and you'll enjoy it. And I'm trying to get one together because I have two male co-hosts that come in here as well. Where I'm gonna need you in the studio for that when we have the brothers come in, because that's gonna be See, Dave is back there shaking his head like we need him in the studio. So
You just let him talk. He has so much to share.
oh my gosh, and it's gold. It's just gold. It's
It
just
is. It's amazing.
It's just dropping gold. Thank you again. I want you all to tune in. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Official DFD. Tune in next Sunday for more Dynamics of Dialogue.
What's up, y'all? This is Most High, and you're listening to Dynamics of Dialogue on IBNX Radio Network. Your Dynamics of Dialogue.
IBNX